Hey guys, my name's Thomas. Just to give you a little background on who I am or what I do, I've been in security and public safety for a little over 10 years, and it's nothing like you would imagine. You know, people think security and they think, oh, Paul Blart. Well, it's nothing like that. You know, I've seen things in this business that normal people would lose their minds over. Okay, when you've seen a college student, 23 years old, 3 weeks from graduation, get crushed to death by a drunk driver, and you're standing 100 feet from her, and you watch him run her head over and then wrap himself around a tree, kill himself, it's not something you can forget very easily. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. We've got a problem with gun violence, okay? And in the wake of this last shooting, I've had multiple debates since it happened, and I've had people tell me that it's my fault because I'm a gun owner. I've had people tell me that I'm a terrorist because I choose to own guns. Let me just make one thing very clear, okay? I carry a gun as a last resort. I'm well trained. I'm trained in Monadnock defensive tactics, and I will use any and all means necessary to protect my life before I reach for my gun. I'm very capable of defending myself. In 10 years of protecting people, I've never had to kill anybody. That's not to say that my gun wasn't needed, because it has been needed. I've been in dozens of situations that would have ended very badly had I not had a firearm on me, okay? But the point is, right now, there's a huge debate going on in this country about whether or not guns should be banned, okay? Let's look at that for a second, okay? You have 370 million guns owned by roughly a third of the United States population, so about 120 million people own 370 million guns, which means somebody could have anywhere from 2 to 40 guns per person. That's excessive, but somehow those people manage to make it through every day without killing anybody. I'm not here to debate whether guns are good or bad, okay? In my experience of saving lives, my gun has been my guardian angel, okay? The real problem here, we need to figure out a way to keep these guns from falling into the hands of psychotic people. This guy in Florida, he was 19 years old. He was in foster care. Everybody that had associated with him, everybody that knew him, knew that there was something wrong with him. Nothing was done. The FBI received over 20 phone calls about how dangerous he was, including a message or a comment that he had posted on a YouTube video about training to become a professional school shooter. The FBI admitted that they screwed up. They admitted that the matter should have been investigated better, and that they should have sent the information to their Miami office. They didn't. And now 17 children are dead. I have a 4-year-old son. I can't even begin to imagine what those people are going through right now. As a gun owner and an American, you might be surprised to learn that I'm not opposed to strengthening regulation and restrictions on firearms. The Second Amendment was created to protect us from many different things, okay? First and foremost, to protect us from people who were willing to try to take away our rights to liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, okay, to protect us from a tyrannical government. Those are all well known, okay, but one thing that the anti-gun lobby uses quite often is the well-regulated militia aspect of the Second Amendment. Here's what I have to say. That is probably the most important piece of the Second Amendment that we as Americans need to recognize. A well-regulated militia. Those words were placed in there for a reason. Okay? What are the key words in that sentence? Or in that piece of a sentence? Well regulated. That does not mean that everybody and their brother should be able to go out and buy a gun just because they're an American citizen. I personally believe that anybody in this country who wants to buy a gun, training should be mandatory. The fact that this kid showed psychotic tendencies, people knew. Kids at the school joked about him shooting up the school. People in the community knew that something was wrong. Teachers knew that something was wrong. His foster parents had to have known that something was wrong. And nothing was done. To those FBI agents who ignored those phone calls, that blood's on your hands as well. I'm not taking any blame away from the shooter. He chose to buy that weapon. He chose to go into that school and murder 17 children. However, you chose not to act, not to do your job. And now because of that, 17 children are dead. The fact that a 19-year-old with psychotic tendencies can walk into a gun store and walk out with a high-powered rifle, even as a gun owner, scares the shit out of me. Instead of talking about banning weapons, we all need to sit down together, both sides of the aisle. I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat, okay? I'm an American. Our founding fathers were from very different backgrounds, very different beliefs. They all came together for a common goal. To combat tyranny and to fight for freedom. They fought, they bled, and they died. For what? So that 240 years later we could sit by on the sidelines and watch our children get gunned down in the street? No. This is our time to make a difference. This is a defining moment in the history of our country. When we look back at this, when we're old and gray, what are we going to tell our children and our grandchildren? Are we going to tell them that we stood up and we fought back and we created a better life for them, a better world for them to live in? We worked together, regardless of our political affiliations and our beliefs, to better the situation for them? Or are we going to have to explain to them why the world went to shit and we allowed it to happen? It's time for us as Americans to sit down and create common sense legislation that keeps these guns out of the hands of people that would use them to create chaos and destruction. As I said already, there's hundreds of millions of guns in this country that don't kill people and never will kill people because they're used for things like hunting and sports and protecting households. I pray to God that I never have to use my weapon. But I will tell you this, I am trained. I was raised by a weapons expert. If that day ever comes, and it's me or them, I'm going to go home to my son. because my son deserves to have his father in his life. The point that I'm trying to make here is that this isn't about whether or not legal citizens should have guns, okay? Because as long as our politicians sit on the sidelines and do nothing, I don't see myself ever walking out of the house without a gun. I've had dozens of people try to kill me over the years, and I've watched the police do absolutely nothing about it. I had a man try to stab me 4 times, and I watched the police talk to him through a car window and then drive away. They didn't feel that it was important enough for them to have to do paperwork. They didn't feel that my son's right to have his father in his life was important enough for them to get out of their car and arrest my attempted murderer. That is why I carry a gun. It's time to put our foolish differences aside. It's time to stop slinging insults at each other, and it's time to sit down collectively as the American people, as the power behind our government, and create legislation that not only protects the rights of legal citizens to bear arms, but punishes those who would do harm, and keeps weapons out of the hands of people who do not need them. No person with a mental disorder should ever be able to walk into a gun store and buy a firearm. Truthfully, no 19-year-old whose brain hasn't developed should be able to walk into a store and buy a firearm. It's our job as Americans to fix this. That's not going to happen as long as we have, on one hand, nobody needs guns, and then on the other hand, keep your hands off my guns. You guys are fighting the wrong fight, okay? Guess what? Nobody's coming for your guns. Even if somehow they were able to get legislation passed to repeal the Second Amendment and somehow get 3/4 of the states to ratify it, they do not have the manpower to go door to door to 130 million homes and confiscate 370 million weapons. It's not possible. But what is possible is for people to take emotions out of it, take beliefs out of it, sit down and discuss what we can do to stop our children from being murdered in the street. We owe it to our future generations. We owe it to our children, to our grandchildren, and we owe it to ourselves. This is not impossible. Many people in recent past have put forth legislation that is reasonable. Obama put forth a bill for expanded background checks. 80% of people on both sides of the aisle supported it. Congress voted no. Meanwhile, we have a government body that has a combined approval rating of 11% and a re-election rate of 92%. It's time to wake up. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. If you are not happy with the way that our country is being run, stop re-electing the people that have spent the last 6 decades destroying it. The Republicans and the Democrats are equally full of crap. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about these dead children. All they care about is their agenda and lining their pockets with our money, period. The media is bought and paid for by the establishment parties. The reason you vote Republican and Democrat is because you're afraid to vote for anyone you've never heard of before. How do you expect anything to change if you don't ever take a chance on somebody else. Because I guarantee you, somebody has to have a better idea of how to run this country than the two parties that have destroyed it. This is our time to do something constructive. As a gun owner, I am more than willing to agree to strengthening regulation. Well, that brings us back to well-regulated militia. Gun regulations are a must. The fact that anyone without a criminal record can walk into a gun store and walk out with a gun that can kill dozens of people within seconds is asinine. Training should not be an option. Anyone who owns a gun, it's your responsibility to never stop training, to never stop becoming more proficient. In the event that we're needed, we need people who know what they're doing, not people who just buy guns because it makes them feel like a big, macho dude, or because it makes them feel like they got a big dick, or because they're too much of a pussy to fight with their hands. Okay? We need people who are willing to take the time to know everything there is to know about the guns that they carry. And at the same time, we need people who are willing to accept the fact that just because the government passes gun legislation, common sense gun laws, doesn't mean that they're coming for your guns. Wake up. Our children's lives are more important than this stupid debate. Make up your mind. What's more important? Our future or this stupid argument? There's no reason why we can't put these laws into motion. Let's make it happen before it's too late.